Welcome to the Equipped Disciple channel. My name is Rick McClatchy. I will be your host. We are here to be and to make disciples of Jesus, and we do that through daily devos, through Sunday sermons, and through other discipleship resources. We are here to equip you to be an equipped disciple. All right, welcome into another day of your daily devos. I'm Pastor Rick, and we're going into Genesis chapter 38 today. We're just making some good steady progress in the book of Genesis. And so let's just go and jump right in. If you are liking the videos, if you could like the video, it helps a lot. Comment, subscribe, do a little dance, and drop a little "Hi Rick" down in the comments. It'd be great to hear from you. And and I'll respond. Okay, cool. So here we go. Verse 1 of chapter 38. So, okay, let's reset, since it's been a whole day since we've been together. We were talking about, in Genesis 37, we're talking about Joseph and his brothers, and Joseph going to check on his brothers, and they throw him in a pit, and then they sell him to the Midianite traders, the Ishmaelites, and they take him to Egypt, and he's in Potiphar's house. So that's what's going on with Joseph right now. The brothers, they take his coat of many colors, they kill a goat, they dip it in the blood, they take it to Dad. They say, "Dad, we got some bad news. There was an animal, a whole thing," and Joseph, yikes, it didn't go well. So Judah is home with his dad and his brothers. His dad is like lost in grief right now. So that's what's going on with Jacob / Israel. And apparently Judah's not really loving life. He's not really loving this whole vibe of dad lost in grief as a result of his actions. About all the brothers' actions, right? They kind of acted in concert with each other. So that's what brings us to the beginning of chapter 38, just to kind of put it in its proper context. And so at that time, that's what we're talking about. At that time, Judah left his brothers and settled near an Adullamite named Hira. So here we have a Canaanite woman. So again, this is kind of, not the direction they want to go. Like, they don't want to marry the Canaanites, because the Canaanites were representative of a lot of idolatry, a lot of paganism. So, he's kind of deviating from the plan, right? The plan is to, like, the covenant community, kind of keeping it together, that kind of thing, because we're gonna worship Yahweh. But you can see in this whole group of brothers just so much, evil, wickedness in their hearts, deviousness, deception. I mean, all kinds of stuff, right? I mean, they just sold their brother to traders and lied to their dad about it and told him that he's dead. So that takes special kind of people to pull off this kind of, like, sometimes, this story is in the Bible and it's pretty well known. So people just kind of like, I don't know, like, whatever, they sold their brother, big deal. But I mean, like, could you imagine picking up a newspaper and reading a story about, take some famous-ish, TV family or whatever, like, from a reality TV show or something, and be like, yeah, and they got together and they sold their brother to be a slave. Like, people would be aghast, like, what? Like, they did what to him? And that's not legal. And, they'd be looking for justice and all kinds of stuff. And so Judah, he leaves his brothers and he settles near an Adullamite named Hira. There, Judah saw the daughter of a Canaanite named Shua, and he took her as a wife and slept with her. She conceived and gave birth to a son, and he named him What a great name. Thank you, Mom and Dad, for not naming me Okay. She conceived again, gave birth to a son, and named him Onan. She gave birth to another son and named him Shelah. Also thankful that I was not named Shelah. It was at Chezib that she gave birth to him. Judah got a wife for his firstborn, and her name was Tamar. Now Judah's firstborn, was evil in the Lord's sight, and the Lord put him to death. So that is literally all the Bible. I mean, could you imagine that you made the Bible? Like, you got into the story of the Bible, and this is all it says about you. She conceived and gave birth to a son named and then now Judah's firstborn, was evil in the Lord's sight and put him to death. That's all you got. That is bad. That's bad news, man. That's bad press. I mean, that's yikes. And there's not even any description about what his evil in the Lord's sight was. Sometimes, James tells us that, we're tempted, we're drawn away and enticed by our own evil desires that leads to sin. Sin, when it's fully grown, leads to death. So sin leads to death all the time. You can't cheat it. It is what it is. Here in Er's case, it happened a little more quickly, right? And so let's see what happens here. So gets put to death, right? Verse 7. Verse 8, then Judah said to Onan, sleep with your brother's wife, perform your duty as her brother-in-law, and produce offspring for your brother. So that is culturally, that was what was expected. You take over the responsibility of producing a line of people for your brother. So the first kid, so the kid that you have with this person does not belong to your line, and that's the way it was. That was your responsibility. It was a big deal. Onan knew that offspring would not be his, so whenever he slept with his brother's wife, he spilled the semen on the ground, and he would not produce offspring for his brother. What he did was evil in the Lord's sight, so he put him to death also. So now we're 2 out of 3 are gone, right? Verse 11, then Judah said to his daughter-in-law Tamar, remain a widow in your father's house until my son Shelah grows up. For he thought, he might die too, like his brothers. So Tamar went to live in her father's house. After a long time, Judah's wife, the daughter of Shua, died. When Judah had finished mourning, he and his friend Hira the Adullamite went up to Timnah to his sheep shearers. Tamar was told, your father-in-law is going up to Timnah to shear his sheep. So she took off her widow's clothes, veiled her face, covered herself, and sat at the entrance of Enaim, which is on the way to Timnah, for she saw that though Shelah had grown up, she had not been given to him as a wife. When Judah saw her, he thought she was a prostitute, for she had covered her face. He went over to her and said, come, let me sleep with you, for he did not know that she was his daughter-in-law. She said, what will you give me for sleeping with me? So there's a whole bad scenario here, guys. Like, this isn't like bad, run away, Judah, don't do it, So I will send you a young goat from my flock, he replied. But she said, only if you leave me something with me until you send it. What should I give you? He asked. She answered, your signet ring, your cord, and the staff in your hand. So he gave them to her and slept with her, and she became pregnant by him. She got up and left, then removed her veil and put her widow's clothes back on. So she just went back home. And when Judah sent the young goat by his friend the Adullamite in order to get back the items he had left with the woman, he could not find her. He asked the man of the place, where's the cult prostitute who was beside the road at Enaim? And there's been no cult prostitute here, they answered. They're like, don't you know what you're talking about? So the Adullamite returned to Judah saying, hey, I couldn't find her. And besides, the men of the place said there's been no cult prostitute here. It's kind of interesting that he wasn't more alarmed by that. Judah replied, let her keep the items for herself. Otherwise, we will become a laughingstock. Because realizing, well, I'm not going to walk around and tell everybody what I did because that'd be silly. And so after all, I did send this young goat, but couldn't find her. So he's like, I tried to pay, I did my part. About 3 months later, Judah was told, your daughter-in-law, Tamar, has been acting like a prostitute, and now she is pregnant. Bring her out, Judah said, and let her be burned to death. Yikes. And she was, as she was being brought out, she sent her father-in-law this message, I am pregnant by the man to whom these items belong. And she added, examine them. Whose signet ring, cord, and staff are these? Judah recognized them and said, "She is more in the right than I, since I did not give her to my son Shelah, and he did not know her intimately again." So their relationship was over in that regard. So it did not continue. So, I mean, I think that's a plus, right? When the time came for her to give birth, there were twins in her womb. As she was giving birth, one of them put out his hand, and the midwife took it and tied a scarlet thread around it, announcing this one came out first. But then he pulled his hand back, and out came his brother. And she said, "What a breakout you have made for yourself." And so he was named Perez, which means to break out or breaker. So he was named Perez. Then his brother, who had the scarlet thread tied to his hand, came out and was named Zerah. So just has to do with scarlet and red and whatever. So it's an interesting little birthing story there. But going back to Judah, his failure to fulfill the job of, giving his youngest son to Tamar to be able to have kids for right? And he told her what he was going to do, and he didn't follow through. He wasn't a man of his word. He didn't have any integrity. He goes to Timnah. On his way to Timnah at Enaim, he meets her, and they have their situation there. And it's interesting because he was going to burn her, right, at the stake, basically. And then when it's found out that he's the guilty one, all of the sudden it's like, oh, she's more right than I am. Let her live. Well, bro, like, what about you? And so, interestingly enough, when you go to Matthew chapter 1 and you read the lineage of Christ, Perez is in the lineage of Christ. So here we are, we talk about Jesus is referred to as the Lion of the tribe of Judah. So Jesus comes from the line of Judah. And a chapter and a half ago, whatever, we talked about how, Leah's sons, they were kind of a mess, right? And Judah, it seemed like he was the upstanding citizen, the shining example. Well, now we see that's not the case either. Judah had a whole bucket full of problems, a whole bucket full of issues, right? And so, wow. I mean, again, kind of a weird story if we're all honest. Like, they're like, "Rick, man, I can't believe you just read this on a video, but it's in the Bible, so we might as well talk about it. Try to be respectful in the way that we talk about it. But, man, it's crazy that God chooses to utilize people that are this messed up. Like, I mean, these guys are they're in the front of the line to get on Jerry Springer. Like, Jerry Springer was like, "Wow, this is a great story. I'm going to get lots of people chanting Jerry, Jerry in the audience because they're going to be so like pumped by this crazy story." Like, that's what we're dealing with. That's who God is choosing to utilize to fulfill the purposes of his plans, because God's not limited, again, by our brokenness. God's not limited by the bad decisions that we make. He certainly wants us to pursue holiness with our lives. Like, he says, "Be holy as I am holy." And that is because he loves us, not because he needs holy people to accomplish his tasks, but because he loves us. He doesn't want to see us in emotional pain and turmoil. God's plans bring true happiness, true wholeness comes from being obedient to God's principles and plans, because God is life. And so to be in his plan is to experience the fullness of life. If Jesus came to give us life and life to the full, it's because life and life to the full can only be experienced when sin has been defeated. So a lot of times people read John 10:10, the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy, but Jesus comes that you have life and life more abundantly. And we focus on life here a lot of times in like the physical prosperity. And I'm not saying that God can't do that part. God can do whatever kind of abundance he wants to bring our way. Like, A lot of times I think we sell God short on how much abundance he wants to bring our way in life if we would obey, if we would follow his plans and principles. Really what he wants to do is he wants to like remove the curse of sin from our lives, and that produces a level of health and wholeness of our soul, that our soul would be well with us. The big thing that I'm kind of pulling away from this chapter, as crazy of a story as it is one, trust God, for crying out loud. Like, he didn't give Sheila to Tamar to be, to fulfill the whole process of having kids for because he was afraid. Like, he operated out of a place of fear, and that is what caused kind of the scenario to be formed for this whole debacle to happen. Because could you imagine, could you imagine, like, he doesn't get to have like normal grandpa relationship with these kids because they're his kids, right? And so that's complicated. It's kind of messy, right? And how do you explain that? And what does that look like for the rest of their lives? And I don't know. It's very confusing, and it's very painful because it was born out of a situation of sin. It has the consequences of sin kind of attached to it. So, end of the story, God is bigger than our brokenness. God is bigger than our mistakes. He's bigger than our operating out of fear. He can still orchestrate our lives to follow the plan. Now, we want to surrender to him. We want to give our lives to him. We want to obey, because there is blessing that comes with obedience. All kinds of great stuff comes when we follow God's plan. It really is the best plan. It really is the best way to go. But God also has come to offer forgiveness and restoration and peace and wholeness into our lives. And even when we make these momentous mistakes in life, he is still able to redeem. He's still able to restore. He's still able to fulfill the call of God on people's lives through it all. Now, it doesn't mean that what Judah did was okay. It doesn't mean that it wasn't sin. It doesn't mean that he didn't bring a lot of challenges into his life as a result. None of that is true. Like, no, Judah sinned. This was bad news bears, right? This is bad decisions, but God works in spite of it all and redeems it all. God is that big. He's that great. He's that amazing. So just pull out your journal today and journal about maybe some mistakes you've made in your past, and maybe start to even think and pray and ask God, like, God, have you already maybe started the process of redeeming some of these things I've done in my past? And allow your ability to see what God has done in the situations of your past to just generate worship and adoration and praise coming out of your heart as a result. So with that, God bless you. Have a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow.